The move came suddenly, more out of necessity than choice. The organization was growing, its work more urgent than ever. The old office no longer fit, so we shifted into this large, rented house, a place meant to be both a workspace and a refuge for those we support. I was assigned a small room upstairs. It was private, quiet, with a single window that overlooked the backyard. The kind of space where I could settle into the paperwork that always seemed to multiply overnight. Most of the team left by evening, retreating to their homes and lives beyond these walls. But I often stayed late, sometimes to finish reports, sometimes to hold interviews, and sometimes just to avoid the silence that greeted me at home. The house was old, not in a charming, quaint way, but in the way that it carried its history like a weight. The floors creaked beneath each step, the paint peeled in thin strips from the walls, and the air smelled faintly of dust and something else I couldn't name. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was definitely there, a reminder that this place had lived many lives before us. Outside my door, the narrow hallway stretched long and dim, lined with faded portraits whose eyes seemed to follow me whenever I passed. I caught myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting one of them to blink or turn away. But of course, they never did. Not yet. Sometimes, when the afternoon sun hit the peeling wallpaper just right, it seemed to ripple, like fabric caught in a slow, unseen breeze. But the house was still, too still, the kind of stillness that presses against your skin, makes your breath catch. The first few days passed in routine. Footsteps echoed softly down the hall. The distant hum of voices floated up from the ground floor, and the low murmur of keyboards filled the quiet moments. But beneath all that normal noise was something else. A pulse, a quiet rhythm, like the house itself was breathing, watching. I told myself I was imagining things. Old houses creak and groan, shadows play tricks, and loneliness can twist the mind. I focused on my work. I told myself this was just a building, a place to do a job, nothing more. But sometimes when the lights flickered just so, or a shadow moved against the grain of the wood, I felt the weight of unseen eyes. The kind of feeling that prickles at the back of your neck, makes your skin crawl. I began to notice little things. The door to my room, which I was sure I'd closed tight, sometimes stood slightly ajar when I returned. A soft tapping noise late at night, faint at first, like fingernails brushing against wood, then growing steadily, as if urging me to listen. The air seemed heavier upstairs, as if the walls absorbed the day's worries and exhaled them back in whispers after dark. At times I thought I heard voices, distant, unintelligible murmurs that stopped the moment I strained to listen. I asked around, but no one else seemed to notice. They left early, eager to escape the house before nightfall. I was the only one who stayed, and I began to wonder if maybe that was the problem. At first, the strange things were easy to dismiss. A creak here, a shadow there. I told myself the house was just old, that my mind was playing tricks after long days and long nights. But the small oddities began to pile up, like loose threads in a sweater slowly unraveling. One evening, I returned to my room after a late meeting. The hallway was unusually cold, the air thick and heavy like it was holding its breath. As I reached for the door, I noticed it was slightly ajar again. I was certain I had locked it earlier. Inside, everything looked normal except the window was open. Just a crack, but enough to let in a sharp, biting chill. I don't remember opening it. The cold seemed to seep into the room, settling around me like a presence. That night, as I tried to focus on the mountain of paperwork, the tapping started again. Soft at first, like raindrops falling on a tin roof, then growing more deliberate, almost rhythmic. I strained to pinpoint its source, but it was impossible. It could have been the walls, the floorboards, or something deeper, something beneath the house itself. My eyes kept drifting to the dark corners of the room where shadows pooled like ink. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A figure, tall and thin, always just beyond clear sight. I'd blink, and it would vanish, leaving only the lingering sense of being watched. Sleep became a stranger. I woke in the dark hours, drenched in sweat, heart pounding to the rhythm of whispered voices that didn't speak words I could understand. They murmured in tones sharp with warning, but also something else, something almost pleading. The portraits lining the hallway outside my room seemed to change too. Their painted eyes glinted with an unnatural shine when I passed. Sometimes I swore they moved, the slightest twitch of a mouth, the faintest tilt of a head. But whenever I stopped to look, they were frozen in place. I stopped telling myself it was imagination. Something was here with me, something patient, watching, waiting, and it didn't want me to leave. More nights passed, and the house grew colder, heavier. The air around me felt thick, like wading through unseen currents, pulling me deeper into something I couldn't name. The shadows stretched longer, swallowing the edges of the hallway. Sometimes I heard footsteps following me in the quiet, slow, measured, echoing just behind. When I turned, no one was there. I began to dread the evenings, the slow descent into darkness that seemed to pull at the house's very walls. It was as if the house itself breathed, a slow exhale that chilled my bones. I started leaving my door unlocked, hoping that whatever was here might feel less compelled to linger. But it made no difference. The presence was patient, relentless. It didn't need me to open the door. It already was inside. The days bled into one another. Morning light came, but it brought no warmth. The house always felt colder after sunrise, like whatever slept during the night had simply curled deeper into the walls and now watched from behind them. I tried to keep a routine. Wake early, brew strong coffee in the ground floor kitchen, sit through meetings, talk to staff, send emails. Normalcy was armor. Thin, cracking armor. During the day, the house was almost kind. The light softened the jagged corners, and laughter from the support team downstairs helped. Vulnerable people came and went, welcomed by our staff, survivors of things I could barely imagine. But I started to envy them. At least they knew the source of their trauma. Mine was still hidden, teasing the edge of reason. Some afternoons I'd retreat to my room just to think. Not work, not really, just sit. The papers on my desk went untouched. I'd stare out the window toward the backyard, where a dying apricot tree clawed the sky, its leafless branches bent like fingers. That's when I started hearing it during the day. Not tapping now, but breathing. Faint, low, wet. Not mechanical or human, but somewhere between. Like the house had lungs buried under floorboards. The staff never mentioned anything. They laughed in the hallway, left for home by 5, and never looked back. I began to notice how quickly they moved when the sun started to drop. Not rushed exactly, but deliberate. Like they knew something. Like they felt something. I asked Farzana, the admin assistant, if she ever noticed anything strange upstairs. She froze for just a moment, barely, then smiled too quickly. "Old houses make noises," she said, already turning away, "especially in the wind." But there hadn't been wind in days. That evening, as I typed a report half-heartedly, I glanced up and froze. The door, which I had locked, checked, and double-checked, was wide open. Beyond it, the hallway was dark, much darker than it should have been, and standing at the far end was something. Not quite a shadow, not quite a figure. It was too tall, too still. Its outline seemed to shimmer like heat rising off asphalt, except there was no warmth, only the cold. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence pushed against my chest, made it hard to breathe. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen mid-sentence. I blinked, and it was gone. But the door remained open. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, not its face because it didn't have one, just the absence of light shaped like something that should not be. By dawn, my hands were trembling. I stopped drinking coffee. It made the paranoia worse. I started keeping a notebook beside my bed, trying to record things. Writing them down helped at first. It gave them shape. But the entries started to get strange. Fragmented sentences, scratched out words, things I didn't remember writing. One page just said, "Don't look at it too long." I don't remember writing that. By the end of the week, I had stopped turning on the lights in my room. I preferred the dark. It made things feel less real. But I still heard it, every night, closer. And the apricot tree outside the window, I could swear it was leaning in ever so slightly, like it too wanted to see what was happening inside. I stopped checking the time at night. The clock felt useless or maybe dishonest. Minutes stretched like hours, and sometimes hours vanished in the blink of an eye. One night I was certain I had only sat down for a moment, just to rest my eyes, not sleep. But when I opened them again, the room was bathed in pale blue light. Early morning. My laptop had turned off. The coffee in the mug was ice cold, and the notebook was open beside me, a page turned. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was jagged, barely legible, like someone trying to remember how to shape letters with hands that weren't quite hands. The words read, "You're not the first." I stared at that sentence for a long time. I didn't touch the page, didn't flip back. I was too afraid to see what else might be there. That day, I forced myself to work from the living room downstairs. It was warmer, brighter. It smelled like people, like conversation and tea and life. I tried to immerse myself in the noise, but even among others, I felt alone. Something had changed. When I passed people in the hallway, they flinched. Subtle, a slight stiffening of the shoulders, a too fast blink. As if I carried something on me now, something visible only at the edge of perception. I caught my reflection in the mirror above the stairwell. It looked right, mostly. But there was a flicker just behind me, too quick to describe, but enough to chill me. I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Looked back at the mirror. My reflection was still turned, still looking. I didn't pass that mirror again. That night, I decided I would not go back upstairs. I'd sleep in the break room, maybe on the couch, just once. But something drew me back. The longer I stayed away from the room, the more a pressure built behind my eyes, in my chest, as if something upstairs was waiting, growing impatient. I found myself at the foot of the stairs without realizing I had walked there. My legs moved without instruction. My hand rose to the banister, gripped it like it remembered the path even if I didn't. The climb felt longer than usual. Each step creaked louder than the one before. At the top, the hallway stretched too far, bending slightly, impossibly, like the house had added new space in the night. My door was open again. No surprise, but something was different. The air was humming, a low vibration that buzzed against my teeth. The kind of sound you feel in your bones before you hear it in your ears. I stepped inside. The light from the hallway didn't follow. The room swallowed it. I stood still for what felt like hours. And then I saw it. Not the thing. Not yet. But the mark. Scratched into the wall above the window. Barely visible. A strange, spiraling symbol. Like a coiled root or a twisted rope. Not letters. Not a language I knew. But it meant something. I knew that without knowing how. I backed out of the room, hand trembling against the door frame, breath shallow. I didn't shut the door. I didn't look away. I walked backward down the hall, step by step, until I reached the stairs. And at the top of the stairs, I turned just once. Behind me, standing in the doorway to my room, was a figure. It had no face, no features, just a smooth, tall silhouette, almost blending with the dark, as if the shadow itself had peeled from the wall and stood upright. It didn't move, but I felt it watching. Not just with eyes, it didn't have those, but with intent, with awareness, and somehow, with ownership. I was no longer a guest here. Something had claimed me. I didn't remember coming downstairs. One moment I was at the top of the staircase, staring at that thing, and the next, I was sitting at the dining table with my coat draped over my shoulders and my laptop open in front of me. The screen glowed faintly. It was blank, just a new Word document open, waiting. But in the middle of the white screen, there was one line typed. "You've seen it now." I didn't remember typing it. I closed the laptop, gently, as if making too much noise might wake something. I tried calling a friend that night, anyone, just to hear another voice. But the signal was weak, like the house had thickened around me, swallowing connection. Every call dropped within seconds. I thought about leaving. I even packed a bag. But at the front door, I stopped, not because I didn't want to go. I did. Every part of me screamed to leave, to run. But the door wouldn't open. The latch turned, the handle worked, but the wood stayed firm like it had sunk roots into the ground. I stepped back and kicked it. Nothing. Not a rattle, not a tremor. It wasn't locked. It just wasn't a door anymore. I stood there, bag at my feet, sweat gathering at my temples. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but from understanding. It wasn't just the upstairs room. The whole house was wrong. I wasn't staying late anymore. I wasn't working overtime. I was being kept. Over the next few days, if they were days, time broke down entirely. Sometimes the sun came up twice without ever going down. Other times it disappeared for what felt like a week. The staff? They were still there, but distant, unreachable. They moved around me like actors who had forgotten their lines. Sometimes they looked at me with pity. Other times, with terror. I cornered one, Sammy, the logistics officer, asked him if he ever felt anything strange here. He stared at me a long time, eyes bloodshot and damp, and whispered, "It knows we don't see it. That's why it leaves us alone." I didn't ask anything else. That night, I woke up on the floor. I hadn't meant to sleep. I had no memory of lying down. But my cheek was pressed to the wooden boards, cold and slick with something. When I sat up, the room was darker than I'd ever seen it. A darkness that felt layered, textured, like standing in ink. The spiral was glowing on the wall now, faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat, and below it, in the shadow, something moved. It didn't walk, didn't crawl. It floated, barely disturbing the air. Its body shifted in unnatural ways, like it didn't care about bones or balance. Limbs too long, head tilted at an impossible angle, like it was trying to mimic what human shape should look like. And failing. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just watched it. And it watched back. Not with eyes, with presence. Then it opened its mouth. Or what I thought was a mouth. And I heard it. Not a sound, not a voice, but a memory. My memory. A conversation I'd had with my mother when I was 10. A dream I once had at 13 about drowning. The first lie I ever told in a job interview. It was speaking in my past. I fell backward, scrambling, eyes locked on the shape as it hovered closer. And then, nothing. I blinked and I was standing in the hallway. Door closed behind me, hand on the knob, mouth dry, and written in dust on the wall beside me. Now we share the room. The air inside the house had changed. It wasn't just heavy anymore. It was aware, like it could feel me move. Like every step I took sent ripples through something deeper than the walls. I stopped using the lights. I didn't mean to. I just forgot. Or maybe they didn't work. I'm not sure anymore. The windows let in just enough dull light to navigate during the day. At night, there was only the glow of my screen, or the faint throbbing pulse from the spiral on the wall. I stopped sleeping in the bed. The floor felt safer, though I couldn't explain why. I had stopped talking to people, even when the team came in the morning. Even when they knocked on my door or offered tea, I'd smile, nod, maybe say thank you. But it felt like I was speaking through glass, like they were on one side of the world and I was on another. And then something happened that I couldn't explain away. My laptop, the files, HR reports, staff records, interview notes. They'd changed. Names I didn't recognize had appeared in the directory. Dates going back decades. Photos of people, black and white, faded, in rooms that looked like mine. Notes about incidents, transfers, resignations due to personal circumstances. One name came up again and again. Jalal Rahimi, former HR officer, hired in 2004, lived on site, reassigned in 2006. But there was no file after that. No record of departure, just a note attached to his final evaluation. No longer suitable for external work. Integration complete. Integration. I searched the name online. Internal database, email chains, nothing. Jalal Rahimi didn't exist, at least not anymore. But I knew the name. I'd seen it before, scrawled once, months ago, on a post-it stuck behind the filing cabinet in the shared office. Jalal, remember to update the donor form. That post-it was gone now. The cabinet, too. Vanished like it had never been there. And yet I remembered. More and more I was forgetting how long I had worked here. I looked at my own resume once just to anchor myself. It felt unfamiliar, like I was reading someone else's life. The photos of my ID badge showed a face I didn't trust. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the window, I'd swear it blinked before I did. And once, just once, I looked into the mirror in the hallway and saw the spiral behind me, etched into my back like a scar. I turned, nothing there, but I still felt it, burning, growing. The worst came on a Sunday night. The house was supposed to be empty, everyone gone. Quiet. I was sitting at my desk, trying to write something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. And then I heard it. Steps, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs, not dragging, not fumbling. No, these steps knew where they were going. They stopped outside my door. No knock, just silence. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then the handle turned, slowly, down, up, then down again. Testing. It didn't open, but a voice spoke, not loud, not whispering, just present. It said, "He made room for you." And then the footsteps receded. I waited an hour before opening the door. The hallway was empty, but the mirror, the one I'd avoided for weeks, had fogged up. And in that fog, a handprint, too long, too thin, pressed from the inside of the glass. It's hard to explain what the house sounds like at night now. It's not creaking or groaning. That would be too ordinary. It's humming, like breath behind a wall, a kind of low, droning exhale that seems to come from the very foundation, rising through the floors like warmth. Except it's cold. Always cold. I started leaving notes for myself. Not reminders, anchors, little truths I could trust. Your name is Rahman. You live in Kabul. You work for an NGO. You are still you. I'd find the notes the next morning, torn in half, rearranged, sometimes rewritten. You were Rahman. You lived here. You served the house. I stopped leaving notes. One evening, as I stared blankly at my screen, I heard something behind the wall. Not footsteps, not whispers, typing, like fingers on a keyboard. Not frantic, rhythmic, familiar. I stood slowly, approached the far side of the room, placed my palm flat against the wall. The typing stopped. Then a knock, sharp, from inside the wall. 3 slow knocks, and then a voice. "Almost done with your report, Rahman." I backed away. My laptop screen flickered and blinked to black. When it came back on, there was a new file open, untitled, a document that hadn't been there before. I scrolled. It was written in my formatting, my tone, even my signature at the bottom, but I hadn't typed any of it. And the content, it wasn't a report, it was a confession. Paragraph after paragraph of things I'd never done, never said. Stories of staff going missing, people found asleep in corners of the house and waking up different, memories rewritten, roles switched, HR staff reassigned to the walls. I should have closed it, should have deleted it, but I kept reading, and at the very end, beneath my forged signature, one line chilled me more than anything I'd seen in this house. Submitted for internal processing by Jalal Rahimi. That night, I sat in the office hallway, staring at the locked door across from mine. A door I had never seen opened. No one ever used it. It wasn't on the floor plan. I approached it, tried the handle, locked. But there was a key in my pocket, a heavy iron one. I had no memory of how it got there. I inserted it, turned. The lock clicked open. Inside, darkness, but something else too. A desk, a coat, a cracked photograph on the wall, a pile of neatly labeled HR files, and in the chair back facing me, a man. Still, silent, motionless, his head tilted slightly as if listening. I didn't speak, I didn't move, but he did. Slowly, he turned his head toward me, just enough for me to see his profile. It was my face, older, paler, eyes sunken, but definitely me. His mouth curled into a smile. He nodded once, and then he whispered, "Took you long enough to get here." The door slammed shut behind me. The door behind me refused to open. No handle, no hinges, just smooth wall, as if it had never been a door at all. I turned back toward the man in the chair, my face, my voice, my expression, yet utterly not me. He stood slowly, like unfolding paper, limbs long, awkward. As he rose, the room expanded, subtly, as if making space for him, for us. He didn't speak again. He just reached out, hand trembling, and touched my chest. Not hard, not gently either. And in that moment, I felt everything. Not pain, not fear. I felt reassignment. I felt names being scraped away like old paint. Memories removed, inspected, edited. File cabinets slamming inside my brain. And then I saw the others. Faces I had glimpsed in the reports. The black and white photos. The dreams. They were in the walls. Not metaphorically. Their outlines pulsed behind the old wallpaper, shifting like shadows underwater. Some were still. Others watched. One reached out through the cracked plaster, fingers just barely pressing outward. Their mouths moved in unison. "You are doing important work." I fell backward, stumbling out of the room, or maybe into another one. I was no longer sure what direction meant. The hallways twisted, ceilings narrowed, the doors grew tall, thin, unreadable. Downstairs, the office space was lit brightly, too brightly. The windows showed no outside world, just fog. My co-workers were there, smiling, typing, organizing files. Each of them wore a small pin on their collar, a silver spiral. I had never seen them wear it before. They didn't acknowledge me, but I heard them whisper as I passed. "Rahman's almost integrated. He's doing well. He'll make a fine addition." I wanted to scream. I wanted to leave. But where would I go? The front door was gone. In its place, a mirror, tall, seamless, and in it, not my reflection. The man from the chair, standing perfectly still. I raised my hand. He didn't move. I turned my head. He kept staring forward, and behind his reflection, the spiral, no longer carved, no longer etched, burning, glowing, alive. It pulsed once, and then I was in my room again. Desk, laptop, tea gone cold, The sun was setting. The team was leaving. One of them waved at me. Normal. Calm. I waved back, sat at my desk, opened a blank document, typed a name. Jalal Rahimi. And under it, HR officer, currently undergoing final stage. I don't remember typing those words, but my fingers kept moving. The report is almost done now. I just need to submit it. And then maybe, just maybe, I'll finally understand what it means to belong to this place. Or maybe I already do. Maybe I always have. The next morning, Rahman didn't feel the need to check his phone or his calendar. There were no meetings, no interviews scheduled. No one had left any files on his desk, and yet the laptop was on. A document was already open. Final report. Personnel integration. Phase complete. The spiral symbol marked the header, now embossed in red, pulsing faintly like a living vein. He stood slowly, walked to the hallway. Everything was cleaner, sharper, like the house had rearranged itself overnight. The carpets were freshly vacuumed. The office furniture glowed under the morning light. The sounds of typing echoed from all directions, steady, mechanical, almost musical. The staff were already here, but none of them looked up. He passed by Marwa, the project lead. She used to hum while typing, but now she was completely silent. Her eyes never blinked. He called her name once. She didn't respond. Then she whispered, as if hearing him from some faraway tunnel. Shh, they're listening. Rahman backed away, tried the kitchen. The food in the fridge was untouched. Expiry dates years out of sync. Milk that never spoiled. Eggs that never cracked. He opened the pantry. Inside, where the cleaning supplies used to be, were files. Hundreds of them. Staff records going back decades. Photographs of people in rooms just like his, at desks just like his. Some of the pages were scorched, others water damaged, some completely blank. But every file ended with the same phrase, merged successfully, retained in structure. He slammed the door shut, returned to his room. The window was now a painting, a frozen scene of cobble, but too perfect. No movement, no sound. He touched the glass. It was warm. Behind him, the door creaked open. Footsteps entered, but not from a person. They sounded wrong, like claws trying to imitate heels. He didn't turn. He couldn't. Instead, he whispered aloud, "Who are you?" The voice that replied wasn't one. It was many, layered, shifting, like everyone he'd ever met, speaking in harmony. "We are what remains when the helpers forget themselves." He finally turned, and the figure in the doorway was not human, not entirely. It wore a human face, or pieces of many, stitched together in impossible symmetry. Its form shimmered, part shadow, part flesh, with eyes that mirrored every soul Rahman had known in that house. And on its chest, a spiral, not metal, not ink, but a hollow wound, turning, always turning. "You wanted to help," it said. "Now you are part of the help. Forever." The walls pulsed, the ceiling breathed. Rahman tried to scream, but the air was thick, like honey. His voice drowned in the silence. The last thing he saw was his own reflection, but not in a mirror. In the glossy surface of the laptop screen, the man staring back at him looked calm, dressed neatly, expression kind. He looked like a model employee. He looked like he belonged. The house still stands, still rents, still welcomes those who stay late to help others. And it always needs HR. One more file, one more name, one more story. Would you like to join?